So the federal government has added Austria and Sweden to the list of COVID-19 high incidence countries from where incoming flights and travel have been restricted, bringing the total number to 15. The Minister of Health says there are now 12 cases, out of which 9 are in Lagos, with the index case having improved greatly and will be discharged from the hospital if his second test proves negative. Like the first case, Dr. Hanire also confirmed the limiting of international air travel to Lagos and Abuja, which he says is for better control, while other international airports are closed. Meanwhile, the Lagos state government is intensifying efforts to contain the spread of the virus in the state. The state governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, today announced a ban on day and night club activities in the state, with a promise that the state is battle ready to contain the spread of the virus. Also cautioned against panic buying of any sort, with a directive that BRT buses, the popular public transport facilities, should not carry more than 47 passengers, and the population at the public gatherings reduced to 50. Let's also dissect these issues from the purview of an economist and political and risk management expert standpoint. I'm now being joined from Washington, D.C. by Professor Kingsley Magalu, a political economist, lawyer, and a former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. He was a presidential candidate in the 2019 elections, and he's the founder of Sugato Strategies, a global strategy and risk management advisory firm. He joins us from Washington, D.C. We'll take a break in about a minute or less, but Professor Magalu, give us an opening statement on what do you think the impact is of coronavirus is, and what this means for Nigeria.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Sheon. The coronavirus 2019 disease has had massive impact around the world. And that also, of course, includes our country, Nigeria. That impact comes across through several channels. There is an impact on our health systems, public health and public safety. There is a massive impact on our economy. There is an impact on fiscal policy, on trade policy. There is also an impact through the price of oil, of course, which is likely leading Nigeria towards a recession. And there is an impact for our border control and immigration policy. So there are several dimensions of the coronavirus for Nigeria. It's a wake-up call for our country on many, many fronts.
It's a situation where advanced countries, as we call them, first world countries, second world countries, as you may describe, are feeling the pinch. But we're going on a break, and when we come back, Professor Magalu, you will give us a sense on how Nigeria can manage this, the response from the CBN, the response from the government, and the way forward for Nigeria. There are crucial steps that are being made, and in the coming days, the state of California and the state of New York are taking drastic measures in the United States. What can we do to make things much more better in this country? That's after this break, everyone. Join us again.
Well, we're going to appeal to our citizens to restrain themselves from panic buying. It's also not out of place for people to have essential materials at home, essential things that you consider essential. You can't have them. But there's really no need for us to begin to panic buy anything. We have not locked down the city. We have not said people cannot move from one place to another. We have not said that people cannot communicate or cannot commute. We have not said that people cannot go to work. None of those have been said. What we're saying is you should observe social distancing, right, as much as possible, and you should desist from assemblage of people that is more than a certain number that were prescribed. That's what is happening. And regarding the buses, what we will say is that we will tell all of our major big buses that they should avoid overcrowding inside the buses. The buses have capacity for 47 sitting, right? That's what we're going to be encouraging them to keep to, right? As much as possible, people should be seated. And in our small buses, they don't have capacities more than 14 or 18. But as much as possible, right, respect other users of such facility. If you need to cough or you need to sneeze, make sure that you do it discreetly and you're not affecting others. These are just social behaviors that people need to observe and do away with.
Welcome back, everyone. You heard there the governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Let's get back to the conversation now. Professor Kingsley Igmoalo, a former deputy governor of the central bank, has been talking to us. He's a political economics, a lawyer, and he was a presidential candidate in the 2019 election. He's a founder of Sugato Strategies and a risk management advisory firm. Thank you so much, Professor, for coming. Are you one of those who share the view that President Buhari should address the nation on this issue?
I'm actually rather surprised that he hasn't. That doesn't take away from the fact that I commend the federal government for the steps it has taken already. But I think it's important that we go beyond those steps to emphasize the need to be proactive and to reposition Nigeria's health system, our economy, our immigration policy. Now, when it comes to President Buhari, I've seen a number of presidents. President Trump addresses the United States every day. The president of Ghana, the president of South Africa. I think it would have been appropriate for President Buhari to address Nigerians, to give Nigerians assurance and outline himself as the leader of our country, the steps that his government is taking. Like I said, I appreciate the fact that a lot of work is being done by the government. But there's something about leadership that calls for a leader to come out and lead from the front and rouse citizens so that we can all rise up together as one country. These are the kinds of things that make us bond as citizens of one country. And a lot is required of the ultimate leadership to make this happen.
Let me get your view on how we then go from here, knowing full well that America was jolted by some of this situation, perhaps from the body language of the president, Donald Trump, at the initial stage. The United Kingdom also, and some of the reports about how that country did not wake up early, especially from the travels from Heathrow. And if you look at what Nigeria is doing, the ban on some of the issues of the reduction in the pump price of petrol, and also some of the macroeconomic impact and what this means for our country, is going to be a lot of trouble on our economy, isn't it? But the big question is that how ready are we as a people, especially our economic system?
Well, let me even begin from the matter of Nigeria's public health system, because there is very little to zero investment in healthcare in Nigeria. What is the percentage of the Nigerian budget that goes to healthcare? That's the first problem. So we need to reposition Nigeria's health system and prepare it for global pandemics such as this: coronavirus, malaria, HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis. So you have to. Nigeria's government must begin to shift its priority towards investing in human capital, its educational system, and its healthcare system. So that's number one. I think we should learn this lesson now and not wait for it to be learned again. Now let's shift to the economy. Now, the macroeconomy, what's the big lesson from this? We are overexposed to China. Like many countries in the world, China is the world's factory, but we are overexposed to it. And most of the manufacturing that happens in the world happens in China. So when China is hit by this type of disease, as like coronavirus, the global supply chain has been massively been disrupted across the world. And Nigeria is one of those countries affected. Demand for Nigeria's oil has tanked almost completely. The price of oil has crashed. Where does this leave us economically? It means that economic diversification is imperative. We have talked about it for 40 years. It has not happened. Devaluation is necessary and long overdue. And I see that the central bank is moving in that direction. But let me sound a note of warning. Why is it that all the devaluations in the past have not done anything for the Nigerian economy? It's because devaluation is pursued in Nigeria as a standalone policy, and it's done in reaction, as a reaction to events. So we don't benefit from it. It simply imports inflation. But it's time for us to begin to use devaluation to reposition the Nigerian economy competitively to encourage exports of manufactured goods, which earns forex and discourage people from importation. My recommendation is that the current devaluation must be accompanied by a number of policies. One, the central bank should stop this ban on forex allocation for the imports of a number of goods. What we should do is to use trade policy to increase tariffs on imported luxury items, and then to give subsidies for local manufacturers, especially those that export. So we now create incentives for the economy to manufacture and export. All right. That's the way we should go.
Prof, I'm being told that I have just about 40 seconds to close this show. The problem here is that the fear of export that we're probably sliding into recession. So some of the biggest economies in the world, because of the pinch of this coronavirus. Just in about 30 seconds, what would be your advice? What would be your decision if you are, for example, the president on the road to recovery in the aftermath or within this period that we're fighting coronavirus?
Well, first of all, Nigeria needs stronger fiscal buffers, because it is those kinds of fiscal buffers that can allow Nigeria to help its citizens in events like this coronavirus. Here in the United States, they're sending checks of about $1,500 or so to every family in the United States, every working family under a certain level of income. We are not in a position to do things like that. The central bank's interventions are good, but they're not enough. The central bank has to cut the monetary policy rate. The Nigerian fiscal authorities need to save much more money. They need to diversify our tax base to raise money domestically, and they should perish any thought of borrowing $22.7 billion, because from all indications, we cannot pay back such a loan.
Professor Kingsley Moghalu, a political economist, lawyer, and a former deputy governor of the central bank, talking to us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for your thought tonight, Professor. Appreciate it. Please keep safe.
Thank you.
It's Friday. No night activities at the pubs and the clubs tonight, as the governor said. But whatever you're doing, keep safe, everyone, and stay out of trouble. I'm sure Akimale. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.